Alright, morning everyone. Let's start with a game today. Alright, now I want everybody to stand up in their seats. Stand up. Here's how we're going to play. Ordinary quarter. I'm going to flip this coin, and you have to guess whether it's heads or tails. Okay? And if you're right, you stay standing, you play the next round. If you're wrong, you got to sit down. Alright? So, first round, we ready? Heads or tails? If you think it's heads, raise your hand. If you think it's tails, hands down by your tails. Alright? It is heads, so if your hands are in the air, stay standing. If it's tails, sit down. Alright, next round. Only for those of you who are still standing. Heads or tails? If you think it's heads, raise your hand. Alright. Heads. So if your hands are up, you stay standing. Otherwise, sit down. Alright, only two of you left. Heads or tails? What do you think? Heads. I got both of you. Alright. Okay, cool. So now when we were flipping this coin, was it more likely or less likely that I'd get heads rather than the tails? Or was it about the same? Right, it's about the same. So what does that mean? What's the chance of me getting heads when I flip this coin? 1/2. Exactly, 1/2. So let's talk about a coin flip. When we flip a coin, there are only two things that can happen, right? Either it's heads or it's tails. So we have heads and we have tails. Now, we said that the chance of heads happening is the same as the chance of tails, right? Okay, well hang on to that. Now let's say we're rolling a die. Let's say we're playing Monopoly or something. You guys like Monopoly? I like Monopoly. That was before your time. Alright, so I roll a die. What's my chance of getting a 6? Is it more than, less than, or equal to the chance of getting like a 1? What do you guys think? Well, let me help you out. Let's write it this way. Okay? Talking about rolling a die. Just like we did over here for the coin flip. What are the different outcomes we can have when we roll a die? 1 through 6. Exactly. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Alright? So what's the chance of rolling a 6? Let me ask you a different question. Does anybody know another word for chance? Maybe they've heard somewhere. Starts with P. Anybody? Anybody? Probability! Exactly. Exactly. So when we talk about what's the chance of some event happening, we're talking about the probability. And this is how we define probability. The probability of a likely event is equal to the number of likely outcomes divided by the number of total outcomes. So what does that mean? Well, let's go back to our coin flip example. If we want the probability of heads, that's going to be our likely outcome. Heads, flipping heads. What's the total number of outcomes when we flip a coin? Anybody? 2, exactly. Probability of heads. The total number of outcomes is 2. Now what's the number of likely outcomes? Well, what's the likely outcome that we want? Heads. And how many ways are there to get heads? 1. Right. So the probability of getting heads is 1/2. Okay? What's the probability of getting tails? 1/2. Yep. Alright, let's go back to rolling a die. Now I ask, what's the probability of getting a 6? Now if we want to do it the same way, how do we do it? The probability of rolling 6 is equal to, what's the number of total outcomes when we roll a die? 6, right? And how many ways are there to get 6? What is the number of likely outcomes when we want a 6? It's just 1. So the probability of rolling 6 is just 1/6. Now is that more than, less than, or equal to the probability of rolling a 1? Exactly, it's the same, right? It's exactly the same. Okay, let's look at a more interesting example. Let's go back to a Monopoly game. Now let's say we're like 3 spaces away from passing go and getting that 200. Okay? So we need a 3 or higher in order to collect that 200. So if we roll a die, what's the probability of getting 3 or higher so we can collect that money? Well, the probability of getting 3 or higher is equal to, what's the total number of outcomes that goes on the bottom? What's the total number of outcomes that can happen when we roll a die? 6, right. Now, what's the number of likely outcomes here? What do we want? We want 3 or higher. So what do I mean by likely outcomes? How many ways you can get 3 or higher? Exactly, you guys are sharp today. Alright, so how many ways can we get 3 or higher? Is 1? Nope. 2? Nope. 3? Yep. 4? Yep. 5 and 6. So how many is that? 4. So the probability of getting 3 or higher and collecting our 200 is 4 out of 6, right? Now, what's another way of writing 4 out of 6? 2 out of 3, right? 2 out of 3. Now, if I told you that I didn't want a fraction, but I wanted a decimal, how would we write 2 out of 3 as a decimal? Well, let's go back to a coin flip. For flipping a coin, we had 1 out of 2. 1 out of 2 as a decimal is 0.5. That's our ratio. But what if we wanted to express it as a percent? What a percent is 100 times our ratio. So what's 100 times 0.5? It's equal to 50%. So we can talk about the likelihood of an event happening in any of these 3 different ways.